making sure that I am technologically able to be transmitted to the constituents. Thank you, Sarah. Before we start, of course, we need to and we must acknowledge that we are having this meeting on various places throughout Hul'qumi'num speaking Coast Salish territories, primarily the Nanaimo First Nation. And we are so grateful for the privilege of being able to meet and conduct our community affairs and thrive in these lands. And we thank them very much. You know, I've been representing Gabriola for some time now, and it's really been an education for me. You know, I feel so blessed and honored to have had these years representing the community and learning just what a unique place it is and how island communities and the trust, the island's trust, how the culture of island communities is as much the goal of sustainability as all of the rest. So I've come to understand the unique characteristics, and we're going to talk a lot about that today, and the different points of view and the disparities and the challenges, but also the beauties and the privileges of people who are able to live on our Gulf Islands, and particularly Gabriola. So it's with that that I have to pay a real honor to all the achievements of the community. We'll talk about a lot of them, but the health center, the Gertie bus, the unique characteristics, the incredible human resource that abides on the island. You know, one of my colleagues did a project with UBC on community asset mapping. And Diane Dunsmuir-Farley told me that we've mapped the hell out of Gabriola. And it's true, you know, there's somebody with an expertise in just about everything, and they're all being put to such high use. Sarah, who works in my office as well, looked at the number of societies and associations on Gabriola, then divided those into the permanent population, and it came out at a number less than 40 people, you know, one for every 40 people, less than 40 people. So that shows you the community engagement and the capacity all rolled into one. It's a leadership role defining what rural and remote communities can be, and you have special capacity. So you're in a leadership role by virtue of that, because all of this is transferable to other communities. So I really, really respect that. And every time I go to Gabriola, I'm reminded of it so well. Anyways, that's a lot longer introduction than Sarah had planned, but here we go. I'm ready to go. We're going to quote a lot here from the Gabriola Health Report. It is an extraordinary piece of work, and I want to give credit to all of the people involved. I won't list them all now, but this work is key in advocating for Gabriola, because in government and with governance, we need to be able to advocate and have the material available to stand on. So this report, I think, to all Gabriolans is absolutely priceless. Okay, with that, today, I think I'm going to mute my camera. And okay, here we have a shared screen, and I'd like to talk to you about the progress that we've made in the past 3.5 years, kind of where we started and where we've come to, and then look at aspects of the platform that I believe could most benefit people on Gabriola. After the presentation, I'll be happy to take questions, and Sarah and I will coordinate that. Before we dive into this presentation, I want to acknowledge that this Gabriola Health Report has been key and fundamental, and I've already done that, but I guess I'm reiterating that you know, the funding and service that Gabriola needs requires even more advocacy, and I'm committing to doing the best I can to be successful in that. When we formed government 3.5 years ago, we were faced with a long list of issues that needed attention, and many of those had been ignored or underfunded for over a decade. Of course, those included poverty, and poverty was and still is a huge issue throughout BC and in our community. At the time Reform government, we had some of the worst child poverty in Canada, with 1 out of every 5 children living in poverty. And that number jumped to 1 in every 2 for children living in a single parent home. Gabriola statistics are quite a bit more challenging than that. In fact, the median income for an individual on Gabriola is $24,290 compared to $29,249 in Nanaimo and $29,783 in BC. Family income, similar differences, with $57,000 on Gabriola compared to $70,000 in Nanaimo. On Gabriola, 25% are considered to be low income. This compares to 16.5% in Nanaimo and 15.5% in BC. So this defines some of the challenges for us, and is certainly at the top of all of our lists when we look at challenges for community. Overall, we had the second highest poverty rates. We were also the only province in Canada not to have a poverty reduction plan that sets targets and measures for reducing poverty. So we have introduced a poverty reduction plan. We have legislated targets. We are coordinating all of government so that every policy of government is directed strategically and in as much a coordinated fashion as possible to benefit the most vulnerable people in our society. Housing was also a major issue, as we were years into a housing crisis that had been ignored by the previous government. Low vacancy rates, skyrocketing costs, there was rampant speculation, foreign ownership, all of that added to the issues. And now we also know that money laundering was a huge part of the inflation of housing, particularly in the Lower Mainland, but that spills out into the rest of the province as well. Healthcare, it covers so many areas, of course, almost every single one of which needed repair when we came to government. The Liberals had brought in Bills 19 and 29 in 2002, which essentially opened the doors for the privatization of our health services, including seniors care, home staff, seniors care home staff, and food and housekeeping services at health facilities. There was a lot of contracting out, and the decrease in service that flowed from that, we're still feeling the effects of. They had wreaked havoc on this system for 15 years, and the funding cuts and an overall lack of investments in the healthcare system was so far behind where it needed to be for our population health outcomes and health needs that there needed to be rapid and essential work done. And a lot of that was carried out before the pandemic. So that work has put us in a position where we are doing so well in handling the pandemic, partly because these services had been largely rebuilt, and many investments that hadn't been made were made. Particularly if you look at healthcare, there are strategic investments around things like diagnostics, MRIs, where the previous government had made very convenient and easy cuts that backlogged and bottlenecked the system. So we've addressed those, and we'll talk more about those in a little bit. There were also, of course, numerous environmental issues that needed to be addressed, the biggest of which was the need to develop a comprehensive plan to address climate change, with targets set and funding to ensure we can meet those targets. And we did that in conjunction with Andrew Weaver and the Green Party caucus at the time. We built this plan, and it is the leading climate change plan in North America. We will continue to build on that. We also had a number of other pressing issues, such as childcare, the opioid crisis, transportation needs, and education, just to name a few. Oh, and ferries. So yeah, there was a lot to do. Here on the left, you can see a list of things that contribute to poverty rates, things like low wages, high cost of living, and an overall lack of social spending. the NDP government put into place a comprehensive poverty reduction plan, which sets goals and targets and ensures we are always working towards a reduction of poverty. We have also increased minimum wage to better reflect the rise in the cost of living. We've increased investments in post-secondary education and training, including the removal of student loan interest and expanding seats in high demand trades. We implemented the affordable childcare benefit and space reduction fee benefit. These alone have put over $9 million back into the pockets of families in this constituency alone. We also raised the wages of early childhood educators by $2 an hour and created funding opportunities for centers to expand, such as the Hope Center has just done. At the Hope Center, $500,000 was invested to build their new building and provide 32 spaces. Then a further 8 spaces were created later. Just on Gabriola, parents have saved over $150,000 in childcare fees. We increased rental supplements for families and low-income seniors, helping more people maintain their housing with more money in their pockets. And this platform adds to that. We have made the largest investment in affordable housing in BC's history. This has resulted in over 1,100 new rentals from Nanaimo to Cowichan so far. We were the last province to still charge a tax to people to access basic health care. And under the BC Liberals, the MSP premiums doubled. We committed to eliminating this regressive tax, and we did, saving families up to $1,800 a year and individuals upwards of $900 a year. This equated to the largest middle income tax break in the province's history. And that's a reflection of our values versus those who work for the 1%. We've also increased funding to social programs such as food banks, the farmers market coupon program, and more. So how does poverty impact Gabriola? From the Gabriola 2020 health report, we can see that poverty rates on the island are in fact quite high, with almost a quarter of people considered low income. Of these, almost 40% are children. So how do we continue moving forward with reducing poverty? These are some of the steps that we will take. We will continue lowering costs for families with fee reductions, introducing the annual renters rebate, lowering costs of ICBC by 40%, and to give people a chance to get ahead, we are committing to a one-time $1,000 relief benefit to families and up to $500 for individuals. I think this one could be particularly important for people on Gabriola. I've heard a lot of feedback through my office from people who experienced financial setbacks due to COVID, but for one reason or another, they just didn't qualify for any of the provincial or federal relief benefits. So this will help them get over the hump here. We will continue with investments in affordable housing through our Housing Hub programs, and we'll expand the role of this innovative team to partner with nonprofit and co-op housing providers to acquire and preserve existing rental housing. We'll also instruct the Housing Hub to look for new pathways to home ownership through rent to own or other equity building programs. I think this is so important to people who are struggling in a lower income environment with high housing costs, that it's so hard to build equity. And we know that. So we're reaching out and we're trying to help people who need the most help and who want to settle down and set roots in our communities, and communities like Gabriola. We're going to expand our $10 a day childcare program, which saves families on average $1,000 a month. And I have to tell you that Sarah and I went to one of these facilities, which is in our constituency in North Cowichan. And the parents there, some of them were in tears, and we were too by the end of it, because this is life-altering for young families. If we take away the MSP premium and just the child care subsidy for that $10 a day program, we're making a huge difference of up to $15,000 per year in those families' lives. And this is just changing the world for them. And I'm not going to try to describe that, because every one of us knows how much a difference that makes to a family that's struggling. And I feel really, really proud of that. And, I hope we're able to continue to improve on that and expand that to benefit more families. It already benefits 32,000 families through the province. We'll provide more funding and opportunities for training and education, as well as more programs that offer job growth in communities. Recently, Gabriola was chosen for a distant home care support worker program, which allowed people in the community to receive training on the island to become home care support workers. This was desperately needed, as I constantly heard from people on the island that struggle to get home care they need. Now, this was a very difficult situation because many of these workers graduated just before COVID, so they weren't able to begin their careers as quickly as they had hoped. I have every confidence that they're going to be very successful in this field, but we have to recognize and honor the struggle that they face now that they aren't able to immediately begin their careers. And this will, once they do, this will at least eliminate the need to have support workers travel by ferry over to the island. I'd like to see more programs like this that benefit the community, the constituency, but particularly Gabriola. This is the way we build a thriving economy that is sustainable. And then that leads us to housing. And what are the housing needs on Gabriola? Well, with over 50% of renters on Gabriola paying more than 30% of their income on rent, and 1 in every 65 residents being homeless, there are some core housing issues that need to be addressed. These are vital pieces, and we all need to sit down and discuss how we address this. I know there are tensions on all sides of this issue, but this is absolutely essential and crucial. So what are the next steps in housing? We've already talked about the increased investments and expansion of housing programs. The next step is in addressing the issue specifically for Gabriola is an application to be submitted for funding. And I know the community has been engaged in this discussion around a proposal. I understand that they should be ready to apply for the next funding cycle. And my commitment to the community is that I will support and advocate for the application to be successful. In my last term in government, I was involved in discussions with the housing minister about the needs for housing on Gabriola, as were other MLAs who represent other Gulf Islands. The most recent of which was was a green housing project on Denman that was successfully received funding. So I'm confident that we will be successful, and once everybody sits down, the project is fully ready to be funded, we'll fight for that project. I'd also like to explore ways to reach people on the island to ensure that those who are low income are aware of the rental supplements that may already be available to them. During the pandemic, my office, Sarah here actually, ended up helping a few people on the island apply for rental subsidies. And originally they wanted to apply for the COVID temporary rental supplement. But after discussion, my staff determined that they were actually eligible for the regular ongoing monthly supplement. And this leads me to believe that there could be others on the island who may not be aware of this program. And I'd like to appeal to all of you to let people know who you might know who are struggling with meeting their rents, that they can always, should I be fortunate enough to be reelected, or whoever is elected, they can always go to the MLA's office and try to be connected to these funds. And I'm confident there are many who qualify but just don't even know it. All right. When we formed government, many aspects of the healthcare system were at the breaking point. And thanks to increased investments and the excellent leadership of Adrian Dix, our health minister, and my dear friend, we have made progress on some important aspects of healthcare funding, or healthcare, including we repealed Bills 19 and 29 to prevent further privatization of healthcare services. Now, I have to stop. I think I've served 15 years to be able to read that sentence, right? Repealed Bills 19 and 29, because Bills 19 and 29 led to the largest mass firing of women in Canadian history. 10,000 workers were fired, and then the contracts were flipped at care homes in order to lower their wages even further. And this is one of the most disgraceful things in the history of our province, I think, in terms of governance. And obviously I'm biased in many ways, but that I think was I know for Adrian, was one of the most important days of his service, his public service. Well, those bills led to conditions that we all became familiar with. Homes that never met their standards. Homes that where standards were so low that there were investigations of unnecessary deaths that were absolutely tragic. And when we came to government, 90% of senior care homes were not meeting the bare minimum of care hour requirements. So we invested $548 million to increase senior care home hours. And we've implemented the change to a team-based primary health care model, including the creation of primary and urgent care clinics, similar to what's on Gabriola. And Gabriola has really led the way, and I've got a lot more to say about the Gabriola Health Center, but and how we need to advocate for better funding and the recognition of its remote status. I think that's key. But this has Gabriola led the way, and now this model is being implemented all over the province with primary and urgent care clinics that are really increasing people's access to healthcare services. We increased surgeries and decreased wait times, and I'm talking about 40% decrease. And we also have, as of February, we will be caught up on Vancouver Island or in Island Health with the surgeries that were canceled due to COVID. We increased diagnostics such as MRIs, and I spoke earlier about how those can create a backlog in the healthcare system that really contributed to wait times. It's an easy place for government to save money by cutting them and by allowing them to be privatized, but we've taken a different approach. We invested in a second machine in Nanaimo. They run 24 hours a day, and that has increased the number of MRIs done just in Nanaimo by 7,000. We invested in more training seats for a variety of medical professions, and we implemented a doctor and nurse recruitment strategy. As mentioned earlier, we also removed MSP premiums and decreased pharmacare deductibles. Moving forward and strengthening our healthcare system, we are committed to addressing the ongoing pandemic by continuing to follow the experts and science. Simply put, that is what has led us to the successful outcomes we've had, along with the participation and goodwill of British Columbians. We are in a good place and we want to stay there. We see numbers increasing and we're trying to increase our vigilance, but these are challenging times, no doubt. And in order to recognize that, we are hiring 7,000 new healthcare workers in long-term care and assisted living as part of our recovery plan. This includes priority training for those who have lost their jobs due to COVID, and includes paid training to make it more accessible. This is how we will recover the economy, by investing in people and by using local people to do the work. We launched the Hospital at Home program, which has been successful in other jurisdictions, relieves pressure on our hospitals, and allows for improved care in a home environment. While we still work on recruiting more doctors, we will also launch BC's second medical school to further expand our healthcare workforce. We will introduce a 10-year cancer plan, which includes a new cancer center in Nanaimo that will provide more accessible treatment options, a lot closer to home. We'll keep trained and qualified staff, and this is critical for providing better care to people. We will develop a staffing retention strategy that provides workers in long-term care and assisted living with leveled up wages, similar to what we've done with childcare and early child educators. This will continue even after the pandemic ends and restore provincial standards for wages, benefits, and working conditions that were cut by the BC Liberals. I have to pause, it just makes me feel good to read that. We'll expand publicly funded home care to provide better care and help with daily living, bathing, dressing, meal preparation, and more, so that people can stay in their own homes for as long as safely possible. It will also improve continuity of care with seniors receiving visits from a more consistent group of care aides. Now, when Sarah and I put this together, this list, you know, I say I have to pause and I enjoy these things because they're important to all of us. There's such a list of things that have been done, and we're so eager to continue improving the lives of British Columbians in this manner. And I hope all of us feel that this is a huge moment for British Columbia, that we're all pulling together at a time when we can drastically improve conditions for people who have been struggling for so long. And this pandemic is demanding that we do that. Now, let's take a look at the progress that we have made in the environment. By far, the biggest progress has been implementing Clean BC. This plan is the most ambitious climate plan in North America. This was put together with Dr. Andrew Weaver, who of course was the leader of the Green Party at the time. And we are on our way. Obviously there are challenges, and we'll discuss those. We've expanded rebates for zero emission vehicles and set a target, a legislated target for a complete phase out. This is vital to climate change and our commitment to electrifying the vehicle fleet in BC. Jurisdictions that have taken this legislative step put themselves at the front of the line when it comes to the newest models and the largest availability of cars and vehicles from the automakers, because they know there will be a market in this jurisdiction. So this was an important step that wasn't really noticed, didn't create a lot of note when it was done about 1.5 years ago, but it was vital to our plans moving forward to electrify and to reduce emissions in this province. We are investing in hundreds of more charging stations for electric vehicles across BC. We've also set requirements for new buildings and retrofits to be more energy efficient and cleaner. Every new building constructed in BC must be net zero ready by 2032. And we've set targets of reducing emissions by 40% by 2030. Now, this net zero building requirement by 2032 is extremely important, and in fact will result in a faster adoption than even that deadline. And I say that because the city of Vancouver, when they increased their building code requirements for buildings, most developers leapfrogged 2 or 3 steps in their process ahead in order to be more competitive when their projects came online. So when we put a target of 2032, we are not interfering with projects that are already underway and creating a market challenge for them, but we are setting a challenge with that date, and we are confident that there will be an early adoption by builders in BC. We are reducing emissions from waste by diverting more waste from landfills and reducing polluting emissions. We are reducing pollution from industries and making them the cleanest in the world. This is a vital part of Clean BC, and we will be working with industry to support that transition. The next steps we are proposing to take in addressing climate change are with heavy vehicles being a large and growing source of emissions, It's essential that we move now to green up BC's industrial transportation. We will expand Clean BC's specialty use vehicle incentive program to get more trucks, buses, ports, airports, and marine vessels off fossil fuels. We'll provide a new income-tested incentive on new and used zero-emission vehicles so more people can get into the electrical vehicle rebate program regardless of their income, further reassuring the marketplace and producers of these vehicles that they will have a viable marketplace in BC, but more importantly, ensuring that it is not only the privileged who can afford to reduce their footprint. We need to make sure that British Columbians, by and large, have an opportunity to participate in reducing our emissions. And I'm very proud of this program. Also, I mean, come on, I'm a cyclist. We're going to remove the PST on e-bikes. Now, I am not too crazy about that because I gotta say I've been struggling up a few hills recently and been passed by people on e-bikes doing about 40K per hour. And that has to be the most demoralizing experience a cyclist can ever have. But so be it. One day I'll be riding one myself, my partner tells me. Anyway, we'll also begin a complete phase out of single-use plastics province-wide. Now, these are steps that, I mean, we all know the challenge, and we hear the global challenge. And this is, I think, a step that begins in a very large jurisdiction, a coastal jurisdiction, to address one of the most pressing environmental issues we face. So I'm also very proud of that. This and this next piece, we will protect clean water in BC by creating a watershed security strategy to plan, manage, and protect local watersheds for the public good. And as part of that strategy, we will seek partnership with the federal government to establish a watershed security fund to fund Indigenous, local, and regionally led clean water initiatives and create good, sustainable local jobs for British Columbians in watershed restoration, monitoring, technology, training, and education. Now, there is no more important piece to island communities than that. And particularly on the east coast of Vancouver Island and on the Gulf Islands, where so much land is privatized and managed by private companies, like Mosaic Timber Company. And these companies play a key role in monitoring, managing, and protecting our sources of water and the health of our watersheds, as well as local communities. Now, they have not been empowered to properly address these issues. And so this I've already had discussions with a couple of the forest companies, and I can tell you they're relieved that there will be a partnership that helps them manage what is really a crucial and vital, essential public service. So we'll also make sure that owners of large industrial projects are bonded moving forward so that they and not BC taxpayers pay the full cost of environmental cleanup if their projects are abandoned. We face this problem up and down the coast with industrial projects and marine facilities that are rotting and threaten the environment or are already causing severe damage. And these are legacy problems that are so difficult for us to deal with, but should never have been allowed to have been abandoned by the responsibility for them be abandoned by these companies. We will not allow that to continue. Lastly, it is important to mention that we will further our BC climate targets by passing legislation requiring BC to reach net zero by 2050. And we do not underestimate that challenge. We will view absolutely every decision that is made in government through that lens. When it comes to transit in the Lower Mainland, it's obvious, but when it comes to all the issues that we face as rural communities, we must take this lens and apply it. And I know that Gabriola has been already doing that by and large, and probably will heave a huge sigh of relief as the rest of the province catches up, hopefully. The last thing I wanted to address is workforce challenges on Gabriola. As we can see from these graphs, a larger percentage of people on Gabriola work part-time precarious work or are self-employed. This obviously presents a number of challenges, and there are steps we are planning to take that will address these. Here are some of the aspects of our platform that I believe will benefit workers on the island. COVID-19 has exposed how precarious livelihoods can be for contract and gig workers. And they represent a growing percentage of the workforce as people cobble together multiple jobs to make ends meet. We will develop a precarious work and gig economy strategy focused on developing employment standards targeted to precarious and gig economy workers. Somebody has to be in the corner of people who work in precarious situations. As part of this strategy, we will develop a government-backed collective benefit fund for independent contractors, the self-employed, and part-time workers, and expand access to a voluntarily pooled capital pension plan for workers who do not otherwise have coverage. So we will offer the opportunity for people who have been left behind to collectively pool their resources, and we will support that so that they can benefit the way other workers do, because they deserve that. And they deserve the opportunity to participate in a pension plan, because it is a core value of British Columbians, I believe, and I know it's a core value of myself, on my own, and the NDP. Our government put BC on the path to a $15 minimum wage in 2021. Going forward, we will tie that wage to the rate of inflation to provide predictability for employers and workers. Everybody on the same plane, everybody playing on the same playing field, a balance. A new regenerative agricultural network will bring together natural systems of production with agri-technologies that enhance production, such as robotics, precision farming, and mesh networks. At a time when the climate crisis is threatening the viability of farming lands, this kind of innovation can bring greater food security, agricultural sustainability, and job creation. Now, this ends the slides, and I want to thank you for joining me. I want to tell you that I've already said how much of an honor it is to represent Gabriola and to be in this position of being able to have that honor. Sorry, I was just trying to unmute my camera. Unmuted my, oh, I think I haven't done it yet. There we are. Thank you. Now, I have to say, and I started out by saying, really, I've heard from Gabriola so many things, and I've learned so much. I've also heard the challenges, and I've also heard challenges to myself, and I accept those challenges. I've listened to people, and I've heard you. I think I'm beginning to understand what the needs are and the perspective. I respect the culture of Gabriola, its diversity, and the uniqueness of that. And I hope to continue to represent that. I will represent every person on Gabriola, regardless of who they vote for, and regardless of their beliefs. I believe my job is to bring people together. And once people have been heard, once they feel adequately heard, they will feel that their right to participate has been protected. But decisions won't always be what each one of us want. This is the essence of compromise, and it is the essence of governance. And I think it's one of the essential characteristics of the personality that is Gabriola. So I know that people have a very highly attuned sense of what's happening. They're involved, they're participating. You are an engaged population, and that brings a lot of benefit, because people are able to move great things forward when they understand the nuances of things and when they get behind projects. I want to respect that. I want to advocate for that, represent it, and I want to get better. And I know that we've done a lot in government so far, but we want to get better. So that will involve all of us. And finally, I believe that my job is similar to what I saw for myself when I owned a bicycle manufacturing and distributing company. I felt that I needed, and as an employer now to my staff, I felt I need to be a facilitator. I need to empower people, and I need to position them for success. And so that's what I see my job now for you, for the community, is to facilitate that you thrive, empower people to be their best, and the community to be what it envisions for itself, what it strives for, and position people to benefit from what the government agenda is. And so finally, I would say this, and that is my job fundamentally is to bend public policy to benefit you and your community, and not the other way around. Thank you. Okay, listen, I'm gonna request that people send in a question if you have one, and I'll attempt to answer. And I'm really pleased that you stayed this long. And I know that that was a lot, but man, it's been a lot. So here we go. I hope somebody's got a question for me. I could tell you a story. I'd love to tell you a story, actually. I mentioned bicycles, you know, and I'd like to tell you a story about someone I met in the bicycle industry. Do I have time, Sarah? Or here's a question. Okay. Okay. No, that's not a question. Okay, I'm supposed to ask you to ask questions via the Q&A function.
Can you not see it?
No, I can't see it.
It's a question about old growth.
Oh, okay. A question about old growth. Yeah, thank you. Hey, I understand that this is one of the most contentious issues, and if you hadn't asked this question, we were prepared to ask it of ourselves. My own work history, I've been a logger, a chokerman, I've worked in a sawmill, I've planted at least 500,000 trees. I've worked as in a lumber yard, and I've built houses. So from beginning to end. And I know the life cycle of our forests is so important, and we can't ignore the significance of our old growth forests. I know that obviously this has been one of the hugest issues in BC for generations. I've for a long time been talking about how complex the forest industry is, given international agreements and restrictions, as well as our obligation to UNDRIP and consultation with First Nations, who do not have a homogeneous view on the issue. So it is an incredibly complex issue. Every step we take has to be so carefully taken because billions of dollars are at stake if we lose our markets because of protectionism in the United States, should we transgress trade agreements. So it's taken a lot of creativity to get us to where we are. We actually had to pass 2 pieces of legislation just to give the minister the right to act in the public interest. It's unbelievable that it could have gotten to that point, but it did. And so we and the Green Party for 25 years campaigned saying that international trade agreements would hamstring government's ability to regulate in the resource industries, and that was right, it has. But we are doing that, but it has taken a lot of creativity. And so what we did was we established a panel, an old growth panel that toured the province and met with stakeholders throughout the province, including in our own constituency. We had protesters outside our office. I spent 3 hours talking to them. Out of that protest, we formed an advisory group that met numerous times in my office and produced a report that we submitted to the old growth panel. They presented the report to the old growth panel. So we've been addressing this issue, but I can finally say, as you see in front of you, that Premier Horgan, you know, I have to get used to calling him that, not John, not really, I'm joking, but you can see in front of you the paradigm shift that we're making is so significant that John has agreed, committed to adopting the report of the old growth panel in its entirety, all of its recommendations. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen, the first recommendation is to pass overarching legislation, committing us to shift our entire legislative and policy framework towards ecosystem health, period. Now that's alters the landscape, literally and figuratively. And so you will see that we will be able to move forward with a different form of management that will also give industry a role in defining this and adapting to it, so that there will be a certainty, a predictability, and we hope will end some of the conflict where we have a zero-sum, oversimplified definition of what we're facing. We're facing a huge, complex challenge of governance that couldn't be more complex, couldn't be more difficult to deal with, but we have to start with some fundamental principles. So this paradigm shift allows us to do that. And I'm very excited. This is one of the reasons that I'm seeking another term, because for 3 terms, I went around the province and around this constituency telling people this is what we would do if we were in government, all these things. Then we got into this previous term in government, and we've done so much, but there's so much more to do. And forestry is one of the first areas of my own concern that we need to do more. And so this, I hope, answers your question, and I hope you'll give us your support so that we can actually make these changes. It's one thing just to say, ban this or do that. You actually have to do it in government with legislative tools. And to do that, you have to have the capacity to govern, and you have to have the experience to be able to project and predict what the consequences of your decisions will be. And I believe that we formed that ability when we were in opposition, and we've deployed those tools and those abilities in government, and that another term with a majority, we will be able to do these kind of bold things that will really fundamentally alter and improve the landscape in our province. Long answer. Thanks for asking.
If elected, would you commit to stopping Site C?
No, I cannot possibly make that commitment, although we are reviewing it. And if the expert opinion is that it should be stopped, then I'm sure the Premier will take that step if he feels that's the positive option. He said just, I believe yesterday, that if that review tells us we're going down the wrong path, we'll change. But based on the information that we had when we came to government, we determined that it was beyond the point of no return. That was the stated goal of the BC Liberal government under Christy Clark, to get that project to that point. And fundamentally, most of what we've been able to do, we quite likely would not have been able to do had we stopped it at that point. But this is not our project. You can certainly refer to pictures of us holding signs against Site C, because we were against starting that project. But it was started, and it was taken to a $4.5 billion hole that would have taken $7 billion to fill. And it was our determination that the best course forward was to continue. What I can commit to is that we will make the decision, whatever it is, in the public interest as we understand it, with courage. My own family, my stepmom's family, were flooded out of to create the Arrow Lakes. They lost their property for 1/3 of its value with no rights. That was the most difficult decision of our government for me personally, to go to my stepmom and tell her that, that we feel it's beyond stopping. And, so it was a tough decision. And many of you and many of our supporters would have wanted us to make a different decision, but we felt we were acting in the public interest, and we will continue to do that, whatever the public interest and experts tell us we should do. And that's my commitment.
What will you do about the ferry lineup?
Wow, I'm glad that question got asked, because it was asked in the all candidates, and you have 1 minute to answer. So let me get it. The magician never tells the tricks, right? But I'll tell you that we're always told when we receive a question, we should connect with that question, which is a natural thing to do. You go, oh yeah, I get it. You want to know this. And then you should contrast and the two different solutions, and then you should solve. Tough to do in 1 minute. So, especially when it's a multifaceted thing like the ferry lineup. So here it is. Obviously, BC Ferries has a role in this, and I agree with Islanders that there should be someone standing, directing traffic, making it safer. I agree with that, and I will advocate for that, and I have advocated for that. But that's nowhere near enough. I'm scared when I'm sitting in that lineup and that bank is right there, and I'm just waiting to see people go, expected to see people rolling down, and then the possibility of people being hit, and then the accidents that have occurred, the tragedies that have been there. It is totally and wholly unacceptable. And I feel as though I probably should have, I acknowledge I probably should have done a better job by now of having that dealt with. It's frustrating. Sometimes, I think it took us 2 years to get a stop sign changed on the island once, but we are working for that. And the question when it was asked was difficult to answer, because it is BC Ferries' responsibility to manage the lineup, but transportation has a huge role in this. None of the road improvements that must be made will be done without their participation, either as the project manager, the partner in the project, or authorizing the project. And so I know they are watching this very closely, and that was the answer that I wanted to give, is that I know that the local transportation ministry staff are actively considering how this can be improved. And my commitment to you is that I will use all the experience I have in order to advocate more successfully for a better solution. I acknowledge that it is nowhere near what it should be.
Someone's asked, if you were to buy an e-bike, what kind would it be?
Oh man, see, I have too many friends that sell too many different bikes because I used to be in the bicycle business. In fact, yeah, no, I just can't answer that. And you know what? It just, yeah, any bike that doesn't necessarily look like an e-bike, so that when you pass me, I won't feel quite so frustrated. I'll just think that you're amazingly fit, going 40 kilometers up the hill in front of me. Yeah, but buy an e-bike. Buy an e-bike. We're at time? Really? Okay. All right. I guess we're going to have to say goodbye, but I really want to thank all of you. I want to thank the people who have advocated for so many years. Hope Center, yeah, and the success we've had there providing childcare spaces, the accessible playground at the school, and a number of other things, but so much more left to do. As John says to us, it's a huge project and we really want to continue it. So if you approve of enough of what we've done, we're asking for your support, and we will do our best with it. And as I close, I want to say one more thing. Do I have time for this? Okay. This is the thing that makes me more proud to be a New Democrat than anything else. And given some of the recent things that have been happening in BC politics, I'd like to read you this list of MLA firsts for the NDP. The first Black man, Emery Barnes, who was the Speaker. The first Black woman, Rosemary Brown. The first Chinese Canadian woman and Cabinet Minister, Jenny Kwan. First Indo-Canadian man, Mo Sahota. First openly gay man, Tim Stevenson. First openly gay woman, Jen McGinn. First Métis woman and Cabinet Minister, Carol James. First First Nations woman and Cabinet Minister, Melanie Mark. First Korean Canadian, Jane Shin. First Taiwanese Canadian, Katrina Chen. First Filipino Canadian, Mabel Elmore. Those make me proud. The first caucus and cabinet in Canada that is 50% female, BC NDP this last term. And in that last term, 5 openly gay or bi members, including myself, 6 South Asians, 1 First Nation, 1 Métis, 1 Taiwanese Canadian, 1 Filipino Canadian, 2 Chinese Canadians. We want to represent the diversity of our province. And part of that diversity is in communities like yours. And I feel a great honor in representing the unique diversity of Gabriola. So thank you very much.